Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. Despite the fact that the British offensive at Arras was just 2 days away, 7th of April 1917 saw fewer battles than the previous day, mainly due to bad weather. Low clouds and rain persisted for most of the day and patrols were flown between the showers. The first major battle of 7th of April took place late in the afternoon. After their observation aircraft had suffered heavy losses, and with battlefield photographs in high demand, the Royal Flying Corps believed that photo reconnaissance might be better carried out by a flight of scout planes. The Germans might not expect such a flight to be on a photographic mission and could simply ignore them. Number 60 Squadron, equipped with French-designed Nieuport 17s, was given the task. At 4:30 p.m., a small section of 6 Nieuports took off from their base west of Arras. One of the aircraft was equipped with a camera. Unfortunately for the British flyers, the plan did not go well. Just south of Arras, directly above the lines, they encountered a deadly enemy, a flight of Albatros D-3s led by the top fighter race of the Great War, Manfred von Richthofen. The number of German planes involved in this battle varies from source to source, but the Red Baron was leading a flight of either 3 or 4 Albatros D-3s. A typical World War I dogfight ensued, and the experienced Germans emerged as clear winners. Von Richthofen singled out one of the Nieuports, whose pilot employed various maneuvers to escape his pursuer. No fewer than 6 times, the Nieuport pilot succeeded. However, on his 7th attempt, the Red Baron was able to hit his opponent. The Nieuport's engine began to smoke and the plane went down in a twisting descent. Von Richthofen initially believed this to be another evasive maneuver, but the British aircraft eventually crashed near Mercatel. The 31-year-old Second Lieutenant George Smart was killed. Sources do not fully agree on other victims. Either 1 or 2 additional Nieuports were shot down in this battle, with the victories credited to Kurt Wolff and Karl Emil Schäfer. Number 60 Squadron confirms 3 losses that day, with 2nd Lieutenant Charles Sidney Hall also killed and Captain Maurice Knowles captured. The latter, however, may have fallen victim to Lieutenant Wilhelm Frankel of Jasta 4 in a separate engagement that took place 2 hours later, south of Ampou. Frankel was the most successful German Jewish fighter pilot of the war, and he had an especially notable day on 6th of April, when he shot down 4 enemy aircraft, including one in the middle of the night. This was described in our previous video, which you can check out if you missed it. Just after 5 p.m., a British aircrew demonstrated a high level of gallantry. 8 Fe-2s were returning from a bombing mission when the flight leader, Captain George Mahoney Jones, looked back and saw one of his crews being attacked by no fewer than 9 German fighters. Although the British formation had already crossed the lines and Mahoney Jones could have easily escaped, he nevertheless chose to turn back and assist his outnumbered comrades. The attacked aircraft ultimately force-landed just inside British lines, with the pilot wounded and the gunner killed. However, Captain Mahoney Jones and his gunner, 2nd Lieutenant Moyes, now found themselves alone against an overwhelming number of enemy planes. Although they initially drove off some of the attacking German fighters, their Fe2 was eventually hit and went down. Both Captain Mahoney Jones and Second Lieutenant Moyes were killed. The victory was credited to Vizefeldwebel Max Müller of Jasta 28, his 6th. On 7th of April, the British lost 8 airplanes and 1 observation balloon. 3 German airplanes and 2 balloons were claimed destroyed, while 3 additional airplanes were claimed as driven out of control. No German losses can be directly matched with these claims, although as mentioned in earlier videos, German records sometimes did not register a loss if the aircrew survived. The only confirmed German loss of the day was a 2-seater, probably a Rumpler C-1, claimed by the French. The following day, 8th of April 1917, saw an improvement in the weather, although it remained quite cloudy. At 4:40 a.m., Hans Klein of Jasta 4 repeated the success of Lieutenant Wilhelm Frankel and achieved the second night victory of the German air service of the month, and very likely of the entire war. Night victories were extremely rare during the Great War, but Klein nevertheless managed to shoot down an Fe2 of No. 100 Squadron RFC, which had carried out a bombing mission against Douai Airfield, the home of Jasta 4. The Fe2 went down southeast of the town. British scouts flew numerous offensive patrols that day and were mostly successful in warding off enemy attacks until 11:40 a.m. At that time, 3 Sopwith 1.5 strutters of No. 43 Squadron were on patrol northeast of Vimy, when they were attacked by a number of Albatros scouts from Jasta 11, once again led by the Red Baron. The number of German aircraft involved varies between 3, as reported by the German side, and 8, as reported by the British. In his report, von Richthofen does not provide many details of the engagement, other than that he singled out one of the Sopwiths, which eventually descended in a curve. The Red Baron followed his victim to the ground, where it crashed. The pilot, Second Lieutenant John Hegarty, survived, while the gunner, Lieutenant Leonard Cantle, was killed. Hegarty, who was soon captured, gave slightly different accounts of the battle on 2 occasions. First, after his repatriation in 1918, and later in an interview years after the war, with the main differences concerning the number of enemy aircraft. However, he recalled engaging a red airplane and realizing that his gunner had stopped firing after a time. Hegarty's controls went slack after sustaining damage, and the Red Fighter followed them down, firing continuously. This was von Richthofen's 38th victory. He achieved another in the afternoon when he shot down a BE-2 of 16 Squadron. Once again, this illustrates that the most successful aces typically increased their scores by shooting down observation aircraft in inferior opponents, rather than engaging in duels with equal adversaries. Jasta 4 sent aircraft into the air after receiving reports of enemy machines heading for Etang. These were RE-8s of number 59 Squadron on a photographic mission. Like other observation units, this squadron often provided its own escort. However, slow two-seaters were hardly effective escorts against the much more nimble German scout planes. At 1:30 p.m., a Jasta 4 patrol located the RE-8s and dove on them. One of the British aircraft was quickly shot down while two more were hit as they retreated across the lines. The aircraft that went down was likely brought down by Lieutenant Wilhelm Frankel. However, he never submitted a claim. As the Jasta 4 pilots still had plenty of fuel remaining, they stayed on patrol behind the front lines. Half an hour later, they encountered a patrol of Bristol Fighters from number 48 Squadron. The Brisfit, or BIF, would become one of the most successful British fighters of the war, but its introduction was far from glorious. As shown in an earlier video, 3 days earlier, number 48 Squadron had suffered heavy casualties when engaged by the Red Baron's Jasta 11 due to the use of incorrect tactics. Several German aircraft were claimed by the Bristol Fighters during and after this battle. However, none can be matched with actual German losses. The Bristol Fighters were attacked by Jasta 4 Albatros scouts, led by Frankel, just after crossing the lines. This time, however, the British crews handled their aircraft differently, and eventually claimed no fewer than 6 German airplanes driven down. Of course, this was greatly exaggerated, but one of these claims was likely genuine. Lieutenant Wilhelm Frankel's Albatros broke apart and crashed between Vitry and Celly, killing its pilot. The cause of Frankel's death might have also been the structural failure of his aircraft's lower wing, a common issue in the otherwise excellent Albatros design. Wilhelm Frankel was credited with 20 aerial victories, making him the most successful German Jewish pilot of the First World War. Number 48 Squadron's claims for the day were however offset by a loss suffered by the same patrol later that day. They were attacked by additional Albatros scouts from Jasta Belke and lost one of their Bristol Fighters. The pilot was killed while the gunner later died of his wounds. The French suffered heavy losses that day, with 10 of their Quadron bombers either shot down or returning with wounded crew members. On 8th of April, the British lost 14 airplanes and 1 balloon. This roughly corresponds with German claims of 18 airplanes and 1 balloon destroyed, including 1 Belgian aircraft. The British claimed 4 enemy airplanes destroyed, along with a further 11 driven out of control, while the French claimed an additional 4 destroyed. German records show the loss of 3 aircraft. Let us know in the comments how you're enjoying the series on the aerial battles of Bloody April, and as always, keep watching Showtime 112.